I'm a pilot. My wife cheated on me, and she thought I wouldn't find out. But instead of confronting her, I took my time, planned everything, and made sure she lost everything. Subscribe, hit that like button, and let's dive in. They say trust is like flying. You never think about falling until the turbulence hits, and by the time you feel it, it's already too late. I'm Ethan Cole, 42 years old, a commercial airline pilot with over 15 years of experience. My job had its challenges, long flights, time zone shifts, constant travel, but I loved it. And I thought my wife, Sophie, understood that. She was 34, elegant, and worked as a sales associate at a high-end clothing store, selling luxury tuxedos to businessmen and VIPs. We had been married for 8 years, no kids, just a nice house, a comfortable life, and what I thought was a strong bond. I wasn't home as much as I wanted to be, but I always made time for her. I brought home souvenirs from different countries, surprised her with gifts, even planned trips when I had time off. But love isn't enough when someone decides they want more. At first it was subtle. She started dressing up more for work, more than what seemed necessary for just selling suits. She would leave the house smelling like expensive perfume, her makeup flawless, her outfits more revealing than they used to be. "It's just part of the job," she'd say, laughing it off. But there was something in the way she said it, a small flicker in her eyes, like she was holding back something. I shrugged it off. Maybe she just wanted to feel good about herself. Maybe she wanted to impress her boss, her coworkers, or just the wealthy clients that came through the door. But then came the late nights, the sudden extra shifts, new company policies requiring more hours. I wanted to believe her, but things weren't adding up. And then there was the mystery customer, a man she had started mentioning in passing. "Oh, this guy came in today, trying on the most expensive suits," she'd say, laughing. "He has this weird charm about him." At first I thought nothing of it, but the more she talked about him, the more my gut told me something wasn't right. "He kept coming back," she said, "and not just to buy. He asked her opinion on everything, complimented her style, made her feel like she had the most important job in the world. And she started smiling when she mentioned him, that subtle change in her tone when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Then the real signs began. She started texting more, always smiling at her phone, turning the screen away when I entered the room. She'd get home too happy for someone who had just worked a full shift on her feet. The way she carried herself was different, as if she had a secret, something just for herself. And the worst part? The scent. Perfume, but not hers. A cologne. Expensive. Musky. Something I didn't recognize. It clung to her clothes like a mark, a stain that couldn't be ignored. My stomach twisted every time she walked past me, and suddenly everything about her started feeling like a stranger. One night I got back from a long-haul flight from London. I was exhausted, body heavy from jet lag, but something felt off. The house was silent, too perfect, as if no one had lived in it all day. I walked upstairs and there she was, fast asleep in bed, phone buzzing next to her pillow. A small, insignificant sound, but one that made my heart pound in my chest. I hesitated for only a second before picking it up. "Tonight was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." That was the moment I knew. That was the moment everything snapped into focus. The late nights, the perfume, the glowing smiles after work, the mystery customer. She wasn't just selling tuxedos anymore, and I was about to make sure she paid for it. I wasn't just a betrayed husband. I was a pilot. I knew how to track things. I understood timing. I was trained to notice small details others ignored. And when it came to my wife's affair, I was about to use all of those skills to my advantage. First, I checked her phone's location history. She didn't know that months ago, when she got a new phone, I had set up tracking. "Just in case you ever lose it," I had told her. She had laughed, not realizing that she had just handed me the most powerful weapon I could ever use against her. The gym, that was a lie. She wasn't spending hours at work either. She was making stops, luxury hotel lobbies, late-night meetups at rooftop bars, a specific high-end restaurant she never once mentioned. And most telling of all, the home address of her so-called mystery customer. I needed more than just location data. I needed proof. So I called in a favor. One of my closest friends was in private security, the same company that handled the store cameras where she worked. It took one call, one favor, and the next morning I had access to the footage. And there it was, her and him. At first it was subtle, lingering touches on his sleeve, flirty laughter. But then the real confirmation, them leaving together, his hand on her lower back, her looking up at him like he was the only man in the world. That was it. That was the moment my marriage officially ended. But unlike most men, I wasn't going to rage. I wasn't going to cry. No, I was going to ruin her. I kept digging. Bank statements, receipts, messages. She had booked a hotel room multiple times using our joint credit card. She had even withdrawn cash, most likely to avoid a paper trail. But she wasn't careful enough. Everything was right there, waiting for me to put the pieces together. And I did. Instead of confronting her, I watched. I let her keep digging her own grave. I let her think she was getting away with it, that I was clueless. I went to work, I smiled, I acted normal, because the longer she thought I knew nothing, the better my revenge would be. I tracked her movements for a week, watching as she repeatedly visited the same upscale locations, hotel meetups that lined up with my own work schedule. She had planned this well, or so she thought. I noted everything down, collected all the digital footprints she had left behind, and built the kind of case against her that would leave her nowhere to run. I could have confronted her that night, showed her the footage, demanded an explanation, but that would have given her control. Let her twist the narrative, cry, beg, manipulate. I wasn't interested in explanations. I wanted consequences, and I had the means to make sure she felt every single one of them. First, I cut off her access to money. She had a separate account, but our joint account drained. I sold my car and transferred everything to a personal, untouchable account. Then I put our house on the market overnight. The paperwork had already been signed. I just needed the final push. That morning, while she was out at work, or so she thought, I packed up everything I cared about and disappeared. Then I started dismantling her life piece by piece. I knew her routine. I knew where she shopped, where she spent money. So I froze her credit cards, had a friend cancel her store discount, canceled her gym membership, made sure she had no access to any of our shared resources. She was completely cut off. The next step, destroying her professional reputation. I anonymously tipped off her job about inappropriate relationships with customers. HR doesn't like scandal. Within a week, she was let go. And just to make sure she couldn't just bounce back, I spread the word in the industry about her unprofessional behavior. High-end fashion is a small world. Word travels fast. She wasn't just fired, she was blacklisted. She called me, over and over, desperate, panicked, and I never answered. Every voicemail was filled with frantic apologies, excuses, and pleads for me to talk to her. I let her voice fade into static and then blocked her number. Then I went after him. Mystery man. The one who thought he could take what was mine. He had a wife, a family, and thanks to my research, I knew exactly where to find them. I made sure she knew everything. Photos, texts, bank records, screenshots, everything. And just like that, his world crumbled too. His wife didn't just leave him. She took their kids, filed for divorce, and exposed his affair publicly. His career, over. I made sure his boss knew about his extracurricular activities, and, surprise, he was out of a job too. But I wasn't done yet. I went deeper. I contacted her landlord, casually informing them of her sudden financial instability. Lease revoked. Eviction notice on the way. She had nowhere to go. The woman who once lived in designer dresses, selling expensive tuxedos, was now crashing on a friend's couch. But I still had one final move. She thought she could still survive, start over, rebuild. I made sure that wouldn't happen. I reached out to her closest friends, some of whom had no idea what she had done. With the right conversations, the right nudges, suddenly her support system collapsed. Nobody wanted to associate with her. Nobody wanted to be caught in the fallout. She wasn't just broke and jobless. She was alone. I waited a month, let her feel the weight of everything, let her sink into the consequences of her choices. And then I sent her one final message. You chose him. Now you get to live with that choice. I don't know if she cried when she read it. I don't know if she was angry or regretful or numb. I didn't care. She had made her decision. She had gambled our life together for a cheap thrill, and I had made sure she lost everything. And that was only the beginning. Sophie had no idea just how fast things could fall apart. One day she was secure in her job, her lifestyle, her little fantasy of balancing two men. The next, she was completely alone. I had spent weeks, months even, orchestrating her downfall, making sure that when her world came crashing down, there was no one left to pick up the pieces. With no job and no money, she was forced to sell most of her belongings just to survive. The expensive designer bags, the jewelry, the high-end clothes she had always flaunted, all gone. She moved from couch to couch, depending on the pity of her so-called friends. But pity runs thin when your name is associated with scandal. People stopped inviting her out. Calls went unanswered. She had become toxic. And it got worse. The guy she had thrown everything away for, he had nothing left either. His wife took everything in the divorce. The house, the cars, the savings. His career was finished, his reputation destroyed. I heard he tried to move to another state for a fresh start. But scandal follows, and employers don't like hiring men with a record of inappropriate workplace relationships. Sophie tried reaching out to me. I knew she would. It was inevitable. The desperation would eventually override her pride. She sent me emails, texts from new numbers, messages through mutual friends. All ignored. I didn't need to read them to know what they said. Apologies, regrets, desperate pleas for me to give her another chance. I never responded. But that didn't mean she stopped trying. She became obsessed with getting my attention. I would come home from flights and find notes taped to my door. Long-winded letters about how she had made a mistake, how she wanted to fix things, how she still loved me. Pathetic. I never read more than a sentence before throwing them away. And then she got desperate. I knew revenge wasn't something she would handle well. When you strip everything away from someone who has never had to struggle, they either crumble or they lash out. Sophie did both. First, it was rumors. She started telling anyone who would listen that I had been emotionally abusive, that I had sabotaged her career out of jealousy, that I was the reason she had no future. Some people believed her, most didn't. Then she tried manipulating mutual friends. She told them she was on the verge of homelessness, that she had no one, that I had left her with nothing. Some of them caved, offering to help her out. That didn't last long, because she was so desperate for revenge, she couldn't stop herself from making threats. She showed up at my work. Twice. Once at the airport, where she tried causing a scene, screaming about how I had ruined her life. Security escorted her out before she could get past the front desk. The second time, she showed up at my apartment. That's when I decided it was time to finish this. I filed for a restraining order. She had left too much evidence. Harassing texts, voicemails, public outbursts. The judge granted it instantly. She was legally banned from contacting me, showing up at my place, or interfering in my life in any way. And just like that, she lost her last connection to me. That was the final straw. She disappeared. No more texts, no more notes, no more outbursts. I'd like to think she finally understood that there was no coming back from this. The strangest thing about revenge is that once it's over, there's nothing left to do. For months, I had been living for this moment. The moment when Sophie was nothing more than a bad memory. And now, she was. I focused on my career. I took on longer flights, requested better routes. I felt free, no longer tied down by betrayal, no longer carrying the weight of anger and resentment. And then something happened that I hadn't expected. I met someone new. It wasn't planned. It wasn't part of some grand scheme. It was simple. A flight attendant I had worked with a few times. Smart, funny, beautiful, but most importantly, honest. We started talking, then dating, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Sophie had once been my world. Now she was nothing. I never looked back.